Hello there. The year 2025 has come to an end, and that means a lot of great things. For example, that we can finally make the joke that I haven't showered since last year. But you know as well what can be made with this new year, and that is the awards of every year. Every single year, in almost every discipline, there's always someone or something winning awards for the year or the year prior. And I decided that this was a great time to rank every single anime that won the award of Anime of the Year of Crunchyroll. Because the Crunchyroll Anime Awards are reaching its 10th year right now, it would have been way more logical to wait until this new show came out and is the actual winner. But I'm pretty dumb and I decided to make it prior to that. At least I make it at the start of the year so it's something of an interesting date. But yeah, I'm very dumb as you can imagine. So yeah, I decided to rank every single one of the 9 winners up until this point. The ranking will be made based in exactly one thing, and is my opinion. Of course, I'm gonna try to argue and I'm gonna try to be as objective as possible, but at the end of the day, I'm making a personal list and a personal ranking. If you have the show in last place at first, is as valid as my list. I'm just trying to do it in the best way that I as a human can. You do not like it? Well, get the hell out of here, you bastard. It's completely fair to disagree with my arrangement of the animes. At the end of the day, as I said, it's my list, and if yours looks different, then it's alright. It's as valid as mine. But you have to take into consideration that because I am a subjective human, my reasonings for something to be higher than other things might be different to yours, and that doesn't mean that yours are less valid nor mine are more valid, but also doesn't mean the other way around. So please don't dislike the millisecond that you see that your favorite show is not number 1, please. But before starting, I just want to make a single rule, because there's multiple ways in which you can arrange them or justify one being higher than the other. So my way to justify it will be very simple. I will just count exactly the season that won the award. There are multiple of these shows that have sequels that did not won the award of Anime of the Year, and even in one case it also has prequels. So I think that is very unfair to compare them specifically because they are not the actual winners. I'm just gonna count the season that won. Not everything before, not everything after, and why I have 3 fingers with only 2 things I do not know. So yeah, with the exception of one singular anime that is a question mark whether it won because of its first season or both of its first 2 seasons, we are gonna count every single one of them individually. And if you want to say that it's unfair to count these with multiple seasons and the others not, don't worry. There's a big reason for it. But before starting, I will shamelessly ask you to please leave a like and subscribe. There's very few of you guys that are actually subscribed, and it will help the channel to grow and make more of this type of content. So yeah, without anything else to say, let's start with the rankings. Number 9. Now, if you know anything about the Crunchyroll Awards, you know that there's 2 shows that are clearly weaker than every other show in this list. Or maybe 3 if you want to go through a technicality. But I'm not gonna count that one. But yeah, there's 2 shows that are clearly inferior to the others, and which one I decided to give it the last spot? Well, it was a difficult question, but at the end I decided to give it to Solo Leveling Seasons 1 and 2. Now you have to remember that being the worst in a list exclusively made out of just award winners is not a bad thing. It's something that can happen, and some show has to be the worst. Now, Solo Leveling has a lot of great things in its favor. It has a fantastic animation, one of the best that has ever been created. The soundtrack is phenomenal, and if it wasn't because the show that I finished the last out of this entire list making it barely above it, it would have been the best in both of these things. And also has very interesting battles to look at. They are very entertaining to look. But yeah, Solo Leveling is definitely the weakest of them all. The story is by far the weakest. It feels like your stereotypical isekai just created with a way bigger budget. There's also the problem of the characters. As you know, a show called Solo Leveling doesn't have a lot of room to great secondary characters. But this show doesn't have barely any importance for its secondary characters. They can appear, they can do things for like 2 chapters and then they are gone or they are deemed as useless. And that is very problematic. It also doesn't help that this means that the entirety of the story revolves around a singular character, which is the protagonist Song Ji-woo. And the problem is that Song Ji-woo is also the least interesting protagonist in this entire list. So you have the combination of the weakest story alongside the weakest cast of characters and the weakest protagonist all in one singular show. Of course, you have to take into consideration something. If you are looking at Solo Leveling, you are not gonna watch it because you want a fantastic story. You are not there to watch a new Full Metal Alchemist. You are not there to watch something like a monster. You are there to pass the time with very good battles. And that's fine. But when you are ranking it, comparing it with other shows and trying to decide which is better, that is not gonna cut it. So this show managed to make what it wants in a very good way, but it doesn't stand out in any other regard other than what it tries to accomplish, which, I mean, it has worked very well. But yeah, because of those aspects that I said, I hope that you understand that it's definitely the weakest show in this list. Number 8. When I started making this list, I was certain that this show was gonna be dead last by a huge margin. But you know something? Yuri on Ice is not as bad. Now, something I didn't mention when I was talking about Solo Leveling is the fact that it shouldn't have won over another show like Freedom's Beyond Journey's End. And that is also true for this show. It was by no means the best show in its own year. However, I watched it very recently because I never watched it when it came out because it came out in 2016, over a decade ago, and at that time I was barely starting to anime and I was not gonna watch the show in which there were Yuri on Ice. Now, it is still a seasonal anime based entirely on romance. It is very, very difficult. The sad scenes or the quote-unquote sad moments are not very good, but they make you feel something. There's also the fact that both the protagonists, Victor and Yuri, are pretty solid. There's also the fact that the secondary characters, although very few of them, they're mostly solid. And as I said, something very important for a story, in my opinion, is the characters. And when you have passable characters, that makes the story much better. Also, the story is very acceptable as well. It's not fantastic by no means, but it makes the job in a very solid way considering that it only has 13 episodes to shine. So even though I didn't like it a couple of the things, it was good enough to barely surpass Solo Leveling. And for the show by itself, I think that it's very solid, as I already stated. If you haven't heard about it, the story is that Yuri is an ice skater and it was a very good one, but he lacked the motivation at some point and he almost retires. But because of something that happens, he now is gonna be coached by Victor, which is the former greatest of the recent generation and maybe the greatest of all time. And they grow closer and closer and it's very obvious that they love each other. That is the whole pun of being called Yuri on Ice. It's a fantastic pun, I'm not gonna lie. But outside of that, it's just a overall good seasonal anime. Did it deserve to win? Absolutely not. There were a couple of animes that were better than it in its own year. Even if I don't remember which of them were, it was very clear that it wasn't the best anime of its own year. But regardless, I think that because it has a solid story and solid characters, it's just barely good enough to edge out the bottom of the list. Number 7. Now is when we start with the actually controversial takes, because most of these shows are very close to each other, yet a lot of them have more fans than others. So I'm gonna start with the 7th spot, which is the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen is very good. It portrays the characters in a very good way. I really like those characters. The animation is great, and the story is very good. One of the better stories out of any recent shonen. But why is this low? Now, it's the reason that I didn't resonate with the show enough. And yeah, even though the characters are very good, the battles are very good, and the story is very good, it's clearly a way inferior one to the one that we see in the second season that we're gonna see later on. And most of the things that you can say that are truly great from this show are also borrowed from those future seasons in the second season and what is gonna be the future third season of the Calling Games and the end game of this entire anime manga. So that's why I'm gonna put it in this spot in the list. Number 6. Okay, if you see that I put Jujutsu Kaisen at 7, you can kinda guess which one is going here. I'm gonna give it to the first season of Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer was an absolute demon when it came out. No pun intended, please. And it was completely justified. It had a fantastic animation. The best one so far that we have ever seen in an anime. We have a lot of interesting things like very cool characters. Even if they are way simpler, they are extremely cool. The story, even though simpler than something like Jujutsu, it was cooler to watch. And combine all of that with the fact that when Demon Slayer came out, it was insane. Like, yeah, Jujutsu has better characters, it has a better story, but once again, they are kinda carried for future seasons. And Demon Slayer managed to make the biggest impact from the get-go. It was insane knowing that a show that was basically coming out of nowhere. Yeah, it was popular for the standards of a regular shonen, but it wasn't like the second coming of Jesus Christ until the anime came out in which it became that. And granted, in retrospect, it didn't deserve to win this award. It was definitely the award to Vinland Saga. I think that there's no debate on that. But even then, I think that this show was so big, it was so good when it came out, that even to this day it's difficult to grasp how influential it was. And out of the sheer respect from that, combined with the fact that I just liked it more than the first season of Jujutsu, like go talk with a wall, I believe that it deserves to barely edge it out. Barely. Numero 5. This show is easily the most well written out of this entire list. It has the best cast of characters, the best cast of protagonists, the best story. And wait, why the hell is this not number 1 then? Well, because we're talking about Attack on Titan, the 4th season, part 1. Yeah, it's obvious that this award was 100% given by the legacy of what Attack on Titan has become. It was the first time in history that they decided to give an award to a show that it wasn't in its first season. It's obvious that they did it because of the legacy. Yet, I'm still gonna count only this season in particular. If we were counting all of the first 3 seasons alongside this, then as I said, this would be no question number 1. But this is not that. This is only 4th season, where they already left Shiganshina. Not anymore. And yeah, I still believe that this is probably the best version of Eren and the best version of a couple of the characters. But at the end of the day, it's just a partial part of a full season, not the full season complete. And I mean, like, it's Attack on Titan. It has like 4, 7, 11 parts of its last season because that's why they decided to do. Why there's so many final season part 7. However, about the story itself, I think that it's a fantastic twist. How basically the hunters become the hunted and how this group of characters, which is like Eren and the group of protagonists, are doing basically the same thing that they did to them. So it's a very huge twist as to, like, they are evil, but not really. We are as evil as them, just that you are seeing this story from our point of view, which makes us the good guys. Like in real life, how every single time the good guys are the ones that win the war and the ones that tell the story. Hi, how beautiful is our war. Number 4. This show was one that I anticipated for a long time. It was one of the most highly anticipated for me to watch the second that I knew about it. And it was from like over half a decade ago, so you can imagine how hype I was. And I'm talking about Made in Abyss first season, and the result was actually very good. You see, I was very high from Made in Abyss, but I actually didn't know what to expect, and when I got was fantastic. It has easily the best world building out of any show in this list, specifically talking about the one season that we are looking at. And the characters are very good because there are children, and usually you know that there's a very thin line between creating a child that actually is smart enough and not annoying, yet it's also not unrealistic. And they managed to make it perfectly in that sweet spot that is, as I'm saying, very difficult to accomplish. The story is also very compelling, and going back with the world building, oh my god, how beautiful is everything. The Abyss is such a complex place. It has a variety of ecosystems and sub-ecosystems. It has its own group of animals, of plants. It has foods and specific ways in which you can cook certain different animals and plants. It uses everything in a fantastic way. It gives justified reasons as to why people would want to go in there despite all of the horrible things that can happen, including something big like the Course of the Abyss. It's also a show that managed to edge out solo leveling in the soundtrack. Oh my god, it's so good, this soundtrack, that it doesn't make any sense. And it has just stood out to the pass of time. And maybe it's even better than when it came out, because I feel like it's so good, especially comparing it with the average thing that came out 8 years ago when that show came out. That is nonsensical. And yeah, I know that for someone that has no idea what this show is all about, all of the art style might look extremely awkward. And granted, it feels weird at times, but the second that you stop caring about that and you gave it like 3 episodes into the story, you are completely engulfed by it and you completely forget about all of that. It's just a fantastic experience that I truly love. And it's such a shame that I'm only counting the first season, because if this counted everything of this war, now that I have seen most of it, it would go probably number 1, and someone put a firework close to me, I got almost deaf. Regardless, talking about this season in particular, I think that is a great one, and the best part of it is that it's so good despite the fact that it's almost entirely just a setup season, and the greatest things are yet to come. Number 3. After talking so many good things about the previous show, what thing can happen for me to put 3 shows above it? What type of incident can happen? Wait, did I said incident? Of course, I'm talking about Jujutsu Kaisen's second season. It's phenomenal. It has a great story, has a great animation, has great battles. What can we say about it? Oh, I know, I can go and talk individually about multiple things. The first mini arc is very good. It adds some interesting characters, it adds justification as to why several different things are happening and will happen later on, and it's the best showcase of Gojo, someone that I personally do not like that much, but in that arc he is very good. And now we have to talk about the Shibuya Incident arc. Oh my god, that might be the best arc for a modern shonen, or at least a conventional one. It has so many good things you can say. The way that it doesn't have to 100% revolve about the main protagonist, the way in which so many different characters are doing stuff, the plot twists around it, the deaths that happen in those chapters, the battles, the rages. Oh my god, it's so good. The only reason to why this show is not higher on the list is because it's basically a singular arc or 2 of a very big show. This is not a self-conclusive story, and it requires the context of previous seasons and the consequences. Even though we can see a portion of them, we cannot see nearly enough, and we need that future context in order to say that this is a fantastic season, which it is. But if the future is lackluster, then in retrospect this stops being as good. And I'm not saying that that happens, but it's something that can happen, and we cannot count all of the points that probably would get otherwise, simply because, as I'm saying, it's not self-conclusive. It's not the start of its own story and not the end of its own story, so I cannot count it. It also doesn't help at all the year in which they got the award. For most other years this would have made sense, but the fact that there was a sequel, a second season that managed to win the award, and it wasn't Vinland Saga's second season, is just nonsensical. And yeah, this is the second time that I mentioned that Vinland Saga was robbed, and I'm not even a huge fan of the series yet. You can imagine how salty the average true fan would be for something as outrageous. Basically, every show has a question mark in where it should have won or if other anime should have won it. But when you consider which type of anime won it in the fact that it was a sequel, and it wasn't the best sequel available, and it wasn't even close, then you start complaining. And that reduces what would have been a very well worthy show for the top 2, but we have to keep going, and we have to look at that top 2. Number 2. Now, the 2 shows that are remaining have multiple things in common. First, both of their stories are completely self-conclusive, and even though one of these shows have a second season announced, that doesn't count because the story in and of itself is self-conclusive, so go talk with a wall. Both of them are very high quality. Both of them have easily the best cast of characters, the best cast of protagonists, and the 2 of them have the best story out of a singular season. So which of them is the one that I decided to put at second? Well, I decided to give it to Devilman Crybaby. Devilman Crybaby was an easy winner the second that it came out. Everybody knew from the get-go that this was gonna be the winner. It was an insane story, a retelling of a show that was over 30 years old at that time, completely directed by Masaki Yuasa, one of the most well-respected anime directors in all of Japan, that actually won multiple awards in its own country with other series. There's also the fact that there was nothing that came close to its quality that came out after winter of that year, which was the season that that show came out, and it was so clear that it deserved the award from the get-go. The story basically follows a devilman that is a crybaby. Oh, what an original story then. But everything around it is so good. The way that Yuasa constantly portrays emotions throughout the weird animation style is probably in its peak in this one. At least in my favorite. There's people that would argue that Pimpon is better, but I personally like this one more. And the story is so well crafted and so magnificently paced for something that is only 10 chapters long. There's not a single episode that feels dragged nor rushed, barring the last one, in which I think that is very obvious that that was the intention. It was fantastic, it was heartwarming, it has some moments of true despair in which you can feel the pain. The only complaint that I have is like that ending that was kinda weird, but even then it was fantastic to look at. So if I have nothing wrong to say about the show, why it's not the first spot? Well, there's this one reason. Do you remember how I said that this was easy the show that deserved to win? Well, that was in the technical sense. Yeah, from the first season of the year being the by far most influential show when it came out, it was obvious that it was bound to win it. However, that same season there's other show that came out that you can argue that was actually better, because in that same year came out Violet Evergarden. It was a very different story. In fact, it was the complete opposite of what Devilman was. However, it never managed to shine from the second that it came out because both of them came out from Netflix. So both of them had to coexist with each other, and the big toll was suffered for the one that was the least popular when it came out, which was Violet. But over the years, Devilman has just kinda been forgotten, while Violet has grown stronger and stronger, also thanks to a movie that was fantastic, but we're not talking about Violet right now. And that is the reason to why I think that it's not fair to give it the first spot. Because even though you can argue that it's the better story between this and number one, the number one spot is better for its own year than what Devilman was for its own year. So it's still a fantastic experience that anyone should watch, not with your parents though. And even though I don't believe that it deserved to win the award, it's still undeniably the second best show in this entire list. Number 1. It's Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Cyberpunk Edge Runners had no possibility of losing this video. Of course, I'm a huge fan of the show, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna be biased in favor of it. I am, but not exactly. This show had most of my favorite elements of any show in this list. It has the by far best protagonist, the by far best secondary characters, it has the by far second best story behind Devilman, it has a fantastic animation only edged out by the actual battle shonens, which is absolutely insane, and it's a show that is not based on animation. It has a fantastic one, but the core of the story is what matters, not the animation. And overall the show has basically no flaws. Not only the animation is great, not only the protagonist David Martinez is fantastic, not only the set of secondary characters is amazing, not only the story is extremely good, but every single aspect of it is great. The soundtrack is good, the world building is fantastic, and if it wasn't because of the fact that Made in Abyss exists, would easily be the best world building. And it's definitely the one that reaches the highest peaks out of any other show. It has some fantastic moments in which you do not expect something happening, like that scene in which you know what happened with our favorite girl. I'm not gonna say for someone that has not seen it, but you know damn well how unexpected that was. But the most important part is how big the emotional moments are. Something that makes or breaks these type of shows are the emotional moments. Of course, the shonens can also have them, but these shows rely more on them, and it manages to use them in a perfect way. You can see that what is happening, it's bound to happen from like episode 6, yet you have the hope that somehow it's not gonna happen, but at the end of the day it does. Because the world is a cruel place, and even if you want to believe that something is not gonna happen, it's bound to happen if you do not stop it. The last chapter was an absolute masterclass in how to create a fantastic emotional moment after emotional moment, while never feeling cheesy, never feeling forced, in what it was, regardless, a fantastic season even without that last chapter. Like, even if it was all of the season but the last chapter, which is the most important, it would have still easily made the top 3. But the fact that it has such a strong ending to such a great story is what makes me believe that this is the best show that has ever won the Crunchyroll Anime Awards. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you want more content like this, ranking different types of animes, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It not only helps the channel, but also helps you to make me know that you actually like rankings and more rankings. And yeah, once again, I hope that you enjoyed it, and without anything else to explain, see you next time. Bye bye. Bye.